He knocked softly on my door that evening, clutching a modest bouquet of wildflowers that had begun to wilt at the edges, and an apology he'd clearly rehearsed in his mind countless times. My niece's ex-boyfriend, the one who'd shattered her heart just weeks earlier, stood there, his eyes heavy with guilt and a flicker of something deeper, something unnamed. I'd planned to be stern, to remind him of the tears he'd caused, to stand firm as her protector. But as the hours slipped by, wine loosening our words into the quiet depths of midnight, something shifted unexpectedly. In his raw honesty, I glimpsed my own long-buried pain. And in offering him comfort, I began to reclaim fragments of myself I'd thought were gone forever. It started with a simple text on a quiet Saturday afternoon. Polite, unassuming words asking if he could stop by for a brief talk. I was surprised he still had my number. I'd assumed he'd vanished from our lives after the breakup. My first instinct was to say no. I'd held my niece through her sobs, seen her fragility up close. I'd always liked him, in a distant way, but loyalty demanded distance. Yet something in his tone, intentional rather than desperate, made me hesitate. I replied with a curt, "Come at 6." By the time the doorbell rang, I'd steeled myself for a quick, civil exchange. I dressed casually, a soft cardigan over an old tank top, jeans, no makeup, just enough to seem composed, detached. But when I opened the door, he looked transformed. No longer the carefree young man who'd joined us for family dinners, but someone weighed down, carrying an invisible burden. His eyes met mine with quiet hesitation as he extended the flowers. "I know this doesn't fix anything," he said softly, "but I needed to say I'm sorry." I stepped aside and let him in. The living room smelled of vanilla candles and aged books, familiar and comforting. He moved slowly, as if unsure of his welcome, and I gestured to the couch. He sank into it with a sigh, placing the bouquet awkwardly on the coffee table. Silence hung between us at first, broken only by the hum of the ceiling fan and the faint tick of the wall clock. Then he spoke, not polished or performative, but raw and unfiltered. He admitted his mistakes, how he'd taken her for granted until it was too late, how he sought understanding more than forgiveness. I listened at first as her aunt, the guardian who'd watched her grow into hope and heartbreak. But as his words flowed, I found myself relating, not as a relative, but as a woman who'd known loss, who'd fumbled love and regretted it deeply. Without thinking, I rose and poured us each a glass of red wine from the kitchen. He accepted with a quiet "thank you." We settled back in, the air softening. I shared fragments of my own past heartbreaks, not the full story, but enough to bridge the gap. Enough to acknowledge that people wound each other unintentionally, that healing often arrives in unlikely forms. It was meant to stay there, a reflective conversation, nothing more. But as the night deepened, our voices grew hushed, pauses lingering. He began looking at me not with remorse alone, but with gentle curiosity, as if discovering me anew, beyond the role of aunt. And I saw him not as the boy who'd hurt her, but as a man navigating his own regrets. The wine eased our guards, but it wasn't the alcohol. It was the rare mirror we found in each other, two wounded souls reflecting shared truths. I don't recall exactly when his hand brushed mine, perhaps during a shared laugh or a thoughtful silence, but I didn't pull away. The contact lingered, electric yet tentative. Later, in the kitchen, I made simple grilled cheese sandwiches, comfort food for unsteady nights. We sat at the small table, a new silence settling, one charged with unspoken questions. He confessed his sleepless nights, haunted by her pain. I nodded, careful not to offer absolution that wasn't mine to give. Yet I softened, recognizing the isolation of shame. We drifted to lighter topics, books, music. He mentioned resuming his writing, something she'd once encouraged. I admitted my own abandoned poems, hidden in dusty journals. He asked to read them someday, and in that request I felt truly seen, not as a supporting figure, but as a woman with her own unspoken depths. As midnight approached, the room glowed softly from the lamp. Without warning, he reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, a small, intimate gesture that sent warmth cascading through me. I froze, aware of the shrinking space between us, my pulse quickening after years of dormancy. He leaned in slightly, eyes searching mine with pure honesty, no coercion, only vulnerability. "I shouldn't stay," he whispered, voice cracking. "I came to apologize, not to." He trailed off. I nodded, knowing. Yet neither of us moved. His hand found mine again, fingers interlacing slowly. In that quiet surrender, we acknowledged the pull, the desire to feel alive, even if forbidden. He asked permission with a whispered, "Can I?" And I nodded barely. The kiss was slow, deliberate, not hungry or reckless, but a gentle surfacing of buried longing. His hand cupped my face. I leaned in, awakening to sensations I'd forgotten. But guilt flickered alongside, memories of her trust, her joy with him. I pulled back, breathless. "This isn't right," he said before I could. "You make me feel seen." That word struck deep. How long had I felt invisible? A divorced woman in her 40s, always reliable, always alone in her composure. I stood, seeking distance in the kitchen, hands gripping the counter. He followed but kept space. "I'm sorry if I crossed a line." "We both did," I replied. "But it doesn't make it meaningless." He closed the gap carefully, hand resting on my waist. "I don't want to be a mistake." Something in me cracked open, the exhaustion of always being the responsible one. "You're not," I whispered. "But we have to be careful." We returned to the couch, clothed and restrained, talking until dawn about life, regret, unexpected paths. No further lines crossed. The connection itself felt profoundly intimate. At 3:12 a.m., he left with a quiet, "Thank you for seeing me." I closed the door, leaning against it, the house quieter yet somehow fuller. I didn't regret it, but knew it couldn't continue. The following days brought a nameless ache, memories of touch, and that kiss mingling with guilt. I dodged my niece's calls, unable to face her happiness, knowing what I'd concealed. He stayed silent too, which both relieved and tormented me. Subtle changes crept in, brighter clothes, a softer gaze in the mirror. I'd spent years being good, and now I craved something vital, however wrong. Then, at the farmer's market, I saw them together, happy, affectionate. Our brief glance exchanged volumes, restraint, memory, quiet sorrow. That night, alone, I confronted myself. I wasn't chasing youth or betraying her. I was reclaiming my own capacity to feel after years of numbness. Cooking became my outlet, chopping, stirring, baking away the turmoil. The doorbell rang unexpectedly one evening. Him again, nervous. "I needed to see you," he said. I stepped onto the porch, arms crossed. I couldn't pretend. That night meant something. "Do you love her?" "Yes," he answered firmly. "But with you, it was different. Honest. It made me question everything." "Thank you," I said. "But this ends here." He left, and a calm settled. Closure came not from denial, but acknowledgement. I resumed my role, reliable aunt, composed woman, but transformed quietly. I'd remembered I could still desire, ache, live beyond routine. That fleeting moment remained our secret. Not scandal, but proof of resilience. Healing, I learned, often lies in graceful release, with gratitude, heart intact, and self rediscovered.